Welcome to the deep dive. We take a whole stack of interesting sources and pull out the key stuff you need to know efficiently and, well, thoroughly.
Yeah, think of it as getting you straight to those aha moments without wading through everything yourself.
Exactly. And today we're diving into chapter 10.pdf. We're looking at something called the four focuses of history makers.
And what's really interesting here is the source itself. It's part of a chapter where you've got this billionaire mentoring an entrepreneur and an artist.
Right. And they're not in some boardroom. They're on a beach in Mauritius.
Yeah, Mauritius. It's quite a backdrop. Kind of highlights how these big ideas can, pop up anywhere.
Totally. So our mission for you listening is to break down these teachings into things you can actually use, strategies for your own growth, personal and professional.
And the billionaire kicks things off with a pretty heavy reflection, actually, on how short life is. He quotes Seneca, something like,
You live as if you were destined to live forever.
no thought of your frailty ever enters your head.
Yeah.
That bit.
Of how much time has already gone by, you take no heed. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How are we using our time?
Absolutely. And to really hammer it home, he shares a couple of stories. First is Eugene O'Kelly, hugely successful CEO, gets a terminal diagnosis, and boom.
Suddenly realizes what matters.
Exactly. He spends his last months reconnecting, regretting the time he didn't spend with loved ones.
Ow.
Powerful stuff.
It's a stark reminder, for sure. And the other story.
Jean-Dominique Bauby, editor of French Elle, massive stroke, ends up with locked-in syndrome.
Oh, wow. Where you can only, blink?
Pretty much.
Okay.
He could only blink one eyelid. But incredibly, he dictates an entire book that way.
No way. The diving bell and the butterfly.
That's the one. Just astonishing resilience, communicating his whole inner world with just a blink. It kind of puts our own daily frustrations into perspective,
Definitely. So the billionaire's opening message really is don't wait. Don't put off living fully, expressing yourself, appreciating the everyday miracles.
Right. Which leads us perfectly into the first of these four focuses. It's called capitalization IQ.
Okay, capitalization IQ, what's the core idea there?
It builds on work by James Flynn, a psychologist. And the main point isn't just about how much talent you're born with. It's much more about how well you capitalize on the potential you do have.
So maximizing what you've got.
Exactly. Someone with, say, average natural talent, but who works incredibly hard, they can often blow past someone who's naturally gifted, but, coasts.
He has that great analogy, doesn't he? It's not the size of the dog in the fight.
It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Yeah.
It's all about that inner drive, that commitment.
And this connects to the 5 a.m. club concept, that victory hour.
Precisely. Dedicating that early morning time to, well, cultivating yourself. And the promise is, more energy, more joy, more freedom in your day.
He seems really into pushing boundaries. What about that tattoo, the Camus quote?
Oh, yeah, the temporary tattoo. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion.
Wow. Heavy. And there was a phoenix, too.
Yeah, rising from the ashes. It's all about breaking free from limitations, especially the ones we put on ourselves.
So it really drives home that idea. Dedication beats raw talent most of the time. Like he says, A players don't get lucky, they make lucky.
Right. And then he introduces this really key concept, our private story about our potential. He says this internal narrative we have is a huge indicator of what we'll actually end up achieving.
Our private story. So what we tell ourselves about what we can do.
Exactly. And the danger is those limiting beliefs we pick up. Things like, ordinary people can't do great things, or genius is born, not made.
Right. And if you believe that,
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself you can't, you probably won't even try hard enough to prove yourself wrong. It's powerful stuff.
that's the self-fulfilling prophecy right there. And he talks about how early influences, parents, teachers, shape this.
Hugely. Those messages we get early on, they kind of program our thinking patterns. We start to believe them, act accordingly, and then, surprise, surprise, the results seem to confirm the original belief, even if it was wrong.
And the more you believe it, the more ingrained it becomes. A habit.
Yeah, the behaviors just lock in. But he also reminds us there's this, fundamental human drive to grow, a psychic need, he calls it, to reach our potential. We want to be heroes in our own lives deep down.
That makes sense. But negative people or messages can quash that.
Definitely. They can make us minimize our abilities, settle for less. He says, real leaders never negotiate their standards. And he quotes Alexander the Great.
Oh, yeah. What's the quote?
I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion.
So leadership isn't about the title.
Not at all. It's about that inner power, the power inside a human heart, and using it to create real value.
Which brings us to that idea of perception versus reality, the filter analogy.
Right. Our beliefs, our past experiences, they act like a filter. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are programmed to see it.
And that Schopenhauer quote fits right in. Most people take the limits of their vision to be the limits of the world.
A few do not. Join them. It's a challenge, isn't it, to question our own perceived limits.
It really is. Makes you think about your own drivers, your values. The entrepreneur in the story has this big realization, right, about her identity being tied up in her company.
Yeah, she realizes she hasn't been living intentionally according to her own values,
Right.
which ties back to that formula they mentioned.
The three-step success formula: awareness, choices, results.
Exactly. Become aware of your beliefs and patterns, make conscious new choices, and then you start seeing different results.
And she gets quite honest about not really knowing her passions, feeling a bit lost.
It's very relatable. And then there's that little romantic spark with the artist.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. A bit of human connection amidst all the high-level stuff.
Keeps it grounded. Then the billionaire talks about money, possessions, says abundance is natural.
And that money can be a tool for good. He mentions he's given most of his away, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And there's that great little story about Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller at the billionaire's party.
Oh, the "I've got enough" line.
Exactly. Heller tells the host, I have something you will never have, the knowledge that I've got enough. It's such a different perspective on wealth and success.
Really powerful. It circles back to believing in yourself first, doesn't it? Picasso.
Mm.
What one does is what counts, not what one had the intention of doing.
Right. Actions speak louder. And he makes this interesting point about how even well-meaning people, teachers, the media, they can accidentally reinforce those limiting stories. He calls it a consistent hypnotization.
Hypnotization sounds a bit sinister.
Well, maybe. But the effect is real. It can dim our own sense of potential, our inner genius.
And if you don't express that potential,
It turns into pain, frustration. He's quite emphatic about that. But he also insists everyone has the capacity for astonishing things. He even breaks down the word astonish.
from the Latin extenere, to leave thunderstruck.
Yeah, so the idea is if we quiet down that negative self-talk, that limiting inner voice,
We can actually hear the call to express our genius.
that's the idea. He calls it the sublime call,
Uh,
and he puts it starkly. If we betray that potential, ignore that call, a part of us starts to die.
oof. Heavy. And the entrepreneur and artist, they kind of feel that.
They both acknowledge it. Yeah, they know they need a change. And it's a good reminder, too, that, many geniuses weren't recognized in their own time. Van Gogh, for instance.
True. And he stresses the importance of who you hang out with.
Hugely. We become our associations.
Yeah.
Negative people just drag you down.
Yeah.
And that suppressed potential, that pain, it can lead to fear, self-hatred even.
And then we seek escape routes.
Exactly. Those soul-crushing escape routes, he calls them. Mindless scrolling, binge-watching, online shopping, distractions.
Which can lead to learned victimhood.
Yeah, that state of complacency, making excuses, blaming everyone else, becoming cynical. So the conclusion for this first focus is clear.
Yeah.
You've got to actively rewrite your story, re-script our personal story, he says.
Okay. Powerful stuff. Let's move to the second focus then. Freedom from distraction.
Right. And the core message here is summed up in what he calls a brain tattoo for successful people.
A brain tattoo. Okay.
An addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production.
Wow. That's blunt.
It is. He argues that technology, social media, while useful, they too often just erode our focus, pull us away from deep work, and maybe even make us a bit less human, fewer real conversations.
Filling time with meaningless clicks and scrolls, he calls it a drug.
A very common one, yeah. And the cost is real.
Hmm.
Lower productivity, worse quality work, more mistakes because we're just not fully present.
He's not saying tech is bad, though, right? It's how we use it.
Exactly. It's the misuse, the constant pings, the endless feeds. It leads to what he terms broken focus syndrome. Our attention is just fractured.
And the solution.
Simplify. Radically.
Yeah.
Simplify, simplify, simplify. It's not about managing time anymore. It's about managing focus.
Okay, managing focus. But then he says something interesting. That getting closer to your genius actually brings more challenges, more fear.
Paradoxically, yes. As you step up, fears kick in harder. Fear of standing out, fear of jealousy, fear of the pressure. And this triggers the amygdala, our brain's little fear center.
Leading to self-sabotage.
Bingo.
Yeah.
We unconsciously pull back into our comfort zone. He calls it the subconscious saboteur.
That little voice trying to keep us safe, but actually holding us back.
Precisely. But the key is awareness. Just knowing these patterns exist gives you the chance to choose differently. The entrepreneur really connects with this, right?
Yeah, she talks about saying yes to too much, useless meetings, checking notifications, even like stalking exes online.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the relatable stuff. And online shopping as an escape. It shows even high achievers struggle. It's fascinating that Steve Jobs apparently knew how addictive tech could be and limited it for his kids.
So why are we so easily distracted? He talks about the ancient brain.
Yeah, the limbic system, the amygdala. Its job for millennia was survival. Keep things stable, watch out for danger, and crucially, it has a negativity bias.
Meaning it pays more attention to bad stuff.
Exactly. Better to mistake a stick for a snake than the other way around, evolutionarily speaking. So it's constantly scanning for threats. In modern life, that translates to worrying about failure, criticism, not being good enough.
Always looking for what's wrong. Okay.
Right.
And that's contrasted with the mastery brain.
Right, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning, rational part, the part that wants growth and progress.
So there's a conflict. Ancient brain wants safety and status quo. Mastery brain wants growth.
Precisely. And stepping out of the comfort zone. That triggers the ancient brain. Stress response, cortisol, tunnel vision, fight or flight.
Which explains why it's hard to be consistently creative and productive. It feels risky to the old brain.
Exactly. So reaching for distractions feels safer, avoids that discomfort. But the people who really achieve things, the real warriors, as he calls them,
They push through that fear.
they push through the external criticism and that internal resistance. It takes real courage. He says continuing when you're frightened is how you become a legend.
Wow. So embracing that fear, pushing through it, is part of the path to growth and freedom.
Absolutely. It's not just about the outer results. It's about the inner expansion that happens when you face the fear.
And this brings us back to the 5 a.m. club again, as a way to find quiet.
Yeah, creating that space for tranquility, minimizing the overstimulation. He lists all these famous early risers, Grisham, Mozart, O'Keeffe, Hemingway,
They all valued that early morning solitude.
immensely. Your escalation requires your isolation, is the phrase he uses.
Yeah.
You need that focused time alone.
He mentions cognitive bandwidth, too. Like, we only have so much mental energy.
Right, from Eldar Shafir's work, limited capacity. Multitasking just shreds it. You try to do 5 things at once, you do none of them well.
So the answer is single tasking. Deep focus on one thing.
In a quiet space. One high-value activity at a time. Like Einstein said, mastery demands all of a person, your whole strength and soul.
Virtuosos don't spread themselves thin.
Not at all. They focus intensely. The hours that become over, the 95%, waste the top 5% treasure. Simple as that.
Then he introduces this brain science thing, transient hypofrontality. It sounds complicated.
It just means the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, temporarily quiets down. Usually happens in deep relaxation or focus, like early morning solitude.
And that's good.
Very good. It stops the overthinking, the constant analysis, brainwaves shift to alpha, even theta, those relaxed creative states, and you get a nice neurochemical cocktail. Dopamine for motivation, serotonin for well-being.
Ah, so that's how you get into the flow state.
Exactly. That peak performance zone where you're fully immersed, time disappears. And the best part, he says you can train yourself to get there more often. It can become a habit.
Okay, fascinating. So focus number 3, personal mastery practice.
Right. And he starts with a bang. The Spartan motto, sweat more in practice, bleed less in war.
Meaning preparation is everything.
Totally. The quality of your morning practice sets the tone for your entire day's performance. You got to put in the work beforehand.
And he mentions the sheer time involved in mastery. Anders Ericsson's research.
Yeah, the 10 years, the roughly 2 hours, 44 minutes daily on average. It's a serious commitment. But it's not just about skills. This practice is about cultivating wisdom, creativity, bravery, inner peace.
It's only when we improve that our lives improve. That's a key line.
Absolutely. You need that daily practice to strengthen your inner world, your core dimensions. Because, as he says, everything you do in your outer world is an absolute consequence of what's happening within you.
Even if you're skeptical about self-help stuff, like the entrepreneur was initially.
Right. Which leads him to introduce the framework for this practice, the 4 interior empires.
Okay, the 4 empires, what are they?
These are the areas to focus on during that victory hour, 5 to 6 a.m. They are mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set.
Mindset, heart set, health set, soul set. Got it. And this is the golden key.
That's what he calls it, the key to transformation. But he's clear. It's not easy. It takes discipline. The core idea. Inner empires come before outer ones. Your fortune always follows your fearlessness.
Your outer success reflects your inner development. Makes sense. Like, if you don't believe you deserve success.
You'll likely sabotage it. If you lack faith, your ambition suffers. Weak drive limits mastery. It all connects. He quotes Gandhi here.
The one about devils.
The only devils in the world are those running in our own hearts.
Yeah.
That is where the battle should be sought. Powerful, eh?
Yeah. So the first step is just becoming really aware of what's going on inside.
High, ultra-clear awareness. Then he kind of teases them, saying the full morning routine, the 20-20-20 formula is coming later.
Huh. Leaves them hanging. And the entrepreneur asks about weekends.
You're like, do we need to do this every single day? And his answer is basically, it's your choice, but consistency brings the biggest rewards.
And she's already feeling the benefits, right? Even just starting out.
Absolutely. More focus, less stress, more energy, gratitude, even less worried about that business attack. It's working. And the billionaire encourages her. Your past is a place to be learned from, not a home to be lived in.
Nice line. Okay, let's break down those empires. Mindset first.
Mindset is about your psychology, your thinking. Psychology of possibility, referencing Ellen Langer. Super important, he says, maybe 25% of the equation. But
not the whole picture.
exactly. It challenges that common idea that just thinking positive is enough. Mindset is crucial, but without sorting out your heart set, it's like building on shaky ground. A superbly developed mindset without a magnificently purified heart set is a hollow triumph.
Okay, so heart set. That's our emotional life.
Yep. All those buried emotions, past hurts, toxic feelings, they block us. He quotes Freud. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and they will come forth later in uglier ways.
Yikes. So if you only work on your thoughts but ignore the feelings.
Your progress will be limited or it won't last. Real change means dealing with that emotional residue, repairing, rebuilding your heart set, processing the past pain.
Makes sense. Then health set, the physical side.
Pretty straightforward, this one. Physical fitness for longevity and vitality, his advice. Do not die.
Blunt again.
But effective. Peak fitness means more healthy years to do your work, lead, create, build your legacy. Plus, every day is just dramatically better with some exercise in it. It optimizes your brain, boosts energy, lowers stress. Foundational.
Okay. Mindset, heart set, health set, and finally soul set, spirituality.
Yeah, but he's careful to say it's not necessarily religious. It's about connecting to your deepest self, your core wisdom, your spirit, your purpose.
He quotes Marlowe. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. How does that fit?
Maybe just emphasizing the power within. But he clarifies. Mindset, psychology, heart set, emotionality, health set, physiology, soul set, spirituality.
Got it. So soul set practice is about?
Spending time in that early morning quiet to reconnect with your inner courage, conviction, compassion, remembering who you really are beneath the layers of conditioning.
He says insecurity, scarcity, selfishness, those are learned, not our true nature.
That's his point. Our core is brave, loving, powerful. Soul set practices contemplation, meditation, thinking about life's brevity. Your contribution help you reconnect with that core.
So you become aware of that inner hero.
And strengthen your relationship with it, which naturally leads you to want to serve others, not just your own ego. It all ties back to that three-step success formula again. Awareness, choices, results applied to your inner world.
And he ends with Tolstoy on happiness. Living for others.
Yeah. In music, love for one's neighbor, such as my idea of happiness. A beautiful note to end that section on.
Okay, brings us to the fourth and final focus. Days stacking.
This one's about perspective. He says each day isn't just a day, it's your precious life in miniature.
Wow. Life in miniature. That's a thought.
It is. We get so focused on the future, the big goals, that we forget the only time we can actually act is right now, today.
He uses the sailboat analogy here, right?
Yeah. Small, tiny adjustments to the rudder, consistently over time, make a massive difference in where you end up. It's the same with your days.
So small daily improvements, 1% wins.
Exactly. Those micro wins. A 1% improvement daily might seem tiny, but it compounds like crazy. Over 30% better in a month, 365% in a year. Small, daily, seemingly insignificant improvements, when done consistently over time, yield staggering results.
Consistency is the magic ingredient again.
Absolutely. Regularity and consistency. And right then, as he's making this point, drama. The entrepreneur's phone buzzes.
With that threatening message about her company?
Yep. But notice her reaction. She's defiant.
Yeah.
I'll fight, she says. Shows the principles are already sinking in.
And the billionaire's calm, tells her it's being handled. Stay present.
Right. Which just makes her more eager to finally learn the nuts and bolts of the morning routine, that 20-20-20 formula.
The anticipation builds. So the core of day stacking is win the morning, win the day.
That's the day stacking foundation. Owning your morning elevates everything that follows. More energy, productivity, confidence, happiness, calm.
He finishes with a quote from Keats about butterflies.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I almost wish we were butterflies and lived but 3 summer days. 3 such days with you I could fill with more delight than 50 common years could ever contain. Just emphasizing the richness of truly living each day.
And the artist loves it. They set up their next 5 a.m. meeting. The journey continues.
Exactly. So just to wrap up the 4 focuses we've covered. First, capitalization IQ, really maximizing the potential you have.
Second, freedom from distraction, guarding your focus like gold.
Third, personal mastery practice, building those 4 inner empires. Mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set.
And fourth, day stacking, making small, consistent improvements every single day, knowing they add up.
Hopefully, for you listening, this dive gave you some solid takeaways, maybe a few of those aha moments we talked about.
Yeah, things you can actually think about applying. We really encourage you to reflect. How do these ideas land for you? What resonates with your own life and goals right now?
And maybe a final thought to chew on. What's one small, just 1% improvement you could genuinely commit to starting tomorrow morning?
And how might focusing more intentionally on those inner empires, your thoughts, feelings, health, spiritic, how might that shift how you see your own potential?
Worth pondering, right. Maybe this is just the start of exploring these ideas more deeply for yourself.